Give me them dunkets. You ever played GTA San Andreas?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, it's a fun game, but it's...
I played it, but not very much.
There's
That's what I just anytime you ask me about a video game, that's what I say. I played it, but not very much.
Yeah, it's whenever you beat up like civilians and like they drop their money, when he picks it up, sometimes he'll say like randomly generated like phrases, and one of them he says is "Give me them dunkets." All right, welcome to SoulKith. I am Molz. This is Rolo.
Hello.
And we have Jake here, a third guest for us today.
What's up?
Yep. And we were just talking about a couple things. We wanted to get you into a different groove this time because we were talking about Dark Souls last episode, and we wanted to segue into some more controversial stuff, but we figured we'd rather keep that on the down low and keep it a little bit more casual for now, because everyone was talking about, the Orlando shooting when it came out, and it was a big topic, and we were deciding, do we want to go into that or do we not? And
then, especially for the first episode, we didn't really want to go in super dark. It was just didn't seem fun.
Yeah, not at all. So we'll keep it casual for y'all tonight. So what's our first topic? What's our first order of business?
All right. So a little while ago, we were talking about basically how humans have not changed in the last 50,000 years.
Yeah.
And that compared to that, our technology has just gone up into space, literally, and how we're not really ready emotionally or like physically, morally, intellectually to be able to deal with those technologies.
Yeah, because you were saying our brains haven't changed from that hunter-gatherer mentality from a long time ago when we were throwing spears at mammoths, and now here we have all this, crazy technology, all of this potentially world-unifying technology at our disposal, but world-ending potentially, and we still don't know bar one of how we actually can approach that, or
Yeah, I mean the ability to design bacteria that can produce gasoline or oil, or send someone to Mars or something. To the moon.
You can create images from people's thought patterns. They have a machine that can attach to someone's brain and actually see their dreams when they're sleeping and put a fucking image of that up on a screen. That to me is mind-blowing.
When they get that to the point where what you're seeing on the screen is actually really clearly and obviously what the person is dreaming or thinking, that's going to be an amazing technology, because it'll take away it'll completely remove the need for painting or video design, because you'll just be able to think shit into existence. And
what's weird is I even remember as a kid I used to think about that idea. I used to think about that. Just wouldn't it be cool if all the crazy stuff that I'm picturing in my head could just instantly be up there, and I had to put zero effort at all into making it a reality. And it's all of a sudden that technology is very real, and it's just like that. That's mind blowing.
I think that it's going to have an amazing impact especially on the arts, which is kind of an obvious, you won't need to spend years training how to do something, how to make a painting or whatever.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's also going to revolutionize pretty much every other industry, because say you want to design a new rocket, just think what it is, and you can design it from the bolts up if you really want.
You've already got a blueprint in your head based on the vague outline that you've got.
Or even better than that, have you ever tried to explain something to someone where you just could not get it to where they could understand what you meant?
Kinda.
Now you just think about it, and it's up on a screen, and they can see it.
It's like you can be as chronically verbose as you want about describing a particular item, and no matter how good your diction is describing it, you might not actually be communicating that image to the person who's listening.
Right.
But now you have an image that can do that. Yeah, that's crazy. That's like the kind of stuff that's so out there, it doesn't even necessarily feel like it's in the realm of possibility for fantasy and sci-fi now. I mean, you see Marvel's The Avengers, and you see Tony Stark putting up a freaking image, and he's just kind of like, Siri, put this up here. Okay, I'm gonna move this with my hand. That stuff. Even that is still kind of on a smaller level than what we're talking about here.
Yeah, there's so many technologies nowadays that I just when I was a kid, which really was not that long ago. I mean, we're not even 30 yet.
No, we're still young.
And some of the technologies that exist today are things that I would my phone. I can touch it. when I was watching Star Trek as a kid, I was like, man, that's so cool. They just have like, like a little screen they can touch and make do things. Well, I can do that now. That's something that actually exists. It's so, I kind of think that it's like inspiring that we are so advanced, but the flip side of that is that it's terrifying. Yes. It's absolutely terrifying.
The responsibility.
Right, like I was saying earlier, that we've become godlike, right?
Yeah.
But the inside of us, like the inside of our brains, the way we think, the way we act, very much not godlike.
Yeah.
And I really don't think that our species is necessarily ready to deal with the responsibility that comes with that stuff.
Not ready to evolve yet. We're still on human level. We're not on Star Child level just yet. Maybe somebody go out there and watch 2001: A Space Odyssey a few more times until you all get it. Then maybe we'll be a little bit closer to that.
The thing about that too is everybody thinks that most everybody thinks that they're intelligent, right? Mm-hmm. Even the stupidest person you ever met,
thinks they're the smartest person in the world,
right? And they think their opinions are completely valid, regardless of whether they have evidence to back it up or not.
Yeah,
and I mean, I've experienced that a shit ton over the last week or so, talking about guns and whatever,
anecdotes. It's all anecdotal. It's all rhetoric, and it's usually a form of self-defense that people put out there to protect either other people or themselves from hurt.
Right. Their ego is so tied up with their beliefs that they can't accept anything other than what they say is true, because that would mean that they're bad somehow.
Or that they're extremely insignificant and small, and that they don't really matter in the grand scheme of everything until they've proven otherwise. Yeah. And that's an intimidating feeling for anyone, but at the same time, it's something that everyone has to go through at one time or another if they want to grow up. And
why would we want to grow up?
Why would you want to grow up?
Peter Pan syndrome.
Yes, exactly. It's everywhere. Become a fucking pirate.
This is why we have that damn adult preschool thing going on in New York.
Did you hear about that?
What?
There's this one random person, an entrepreneur. She funded this academy, this school for adults to go and play like they're kids. It's got like Play-Doh sets, it's got blankets for nappy times, it's got...
Number one, that sounds amazing.
Get out of my house.
Number two, I can't believe that that's a real thing.
It's absurd to me. It's one of those things that strikes me as the kind of thing that like those hipsters
do when they pay for it.
Why? Yeah, exactly. Why wouldn't you not just go out and get those things for yourself and use them at your own time?
You can enjoy them in your own house. You can make your own preschool for yourself, not go back to where you have an old lady who's your preschool teacher telling you, all right, finger paint time, all right, it's nap time, all right, here's some milk and cookies. You can get that yourself.
Speaking of preschool, when I was in preschool, I used to dip my finger in ketchup and say that I cut myself, right? Or I would throw a fry under the table to look up the girls' dresses, because I was a creep even in preschool.
Even perverted in preschool. That's pretty impressive. I was the weird fucking kid who everybody probably thought was a psychopath and was going to become a school shooter. I'd put glue over my hands. I'd rub Elmer's glue all over my hands and then peel off the hand all the time.
You and me both. Dude, that was so much fun.
Yeah, and I would go one step further too, and I would go out into the sandbox. I would dip my head in the sandbox just for the satisfaction of frizzing out my hair and watching all of the shit fall out of my hair and watching people around me go, ew!
See, I don't need a sandbox for that goddamn dandruff.
I don't know. I think that was part of it. But it's interesting to me that part of being that nostalgia generation that we're talking about also includes this weird retreat from that adult responsibility. Not just an acknowledgement and a fear of it, but an active retreat to try and virtuize make a virtue of things that are technically regressive traits, where you're running backwards and trying to preserve your childhood and saying it's almost like an assumption that in order to become an adult, you have to kill your inner child, which is not the case. Nope. You don't have to kill your inner child to become an adult, but you do have to become an adult.
I would say that a big part of that is a combination of how the economy was doing when we basically got out of high school. When we first became adults, it was very difficult for most people, and still is for anybody to get a job.
Undoubtedly.
And because of that, if you see being an adult as being this really stressful, really hard thing, why wouldn't you want to go back to being a kid where things were easier?
Yeah.
The other side of that too is that when we were kids, right? People always I don't know about you, but I heard a lot, that being an adult doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like give up playing video games or like doing whatever it is that you do as a kid.
Yep.
And I think that you can easily extrapolate like a path where that leads you to avoiding responsibility and avoiding really any kind of like adulting type stuff.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys that are our age who are already making themselves into entrepreneurs of that. You know, I may not necessarily watch it myself, but you got those guys like Game Grumps or whatever, those Let's Players. Like PewDiePie, I can't stand the guy. His voice annoys me to no hell, but the guy just plays video games and reacts to him, and he has like 1 billion plus followers, and he's probably paid fat.
Super rich.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, your chances of actually hitting it that big on a market like YouTube is pretty fucking small, but either way, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, no, that opportunity does exist for you to turn your passions into gold.
I gotta say that's one of the things that I've always thought was gonna be like the saving grace of our generation was entrepreneurism.
Yeah.
Is that because it's so difficult to go out and find a normal job, right? And we've also all been encouraged to go out and follow our passions, right?
Create new jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Create fill a hole somewhere in the economy that has something to do with what you love. Go paint something for somebody, or go make a scrapbook, or I don't know what the fuck it is. Just go do it.
That's one thing I actually respect. I mean, as much as I find the people of places like, you know, San Francisco or Berkeley a little pretentious, I still can definitely respect the fact that they can make a fucking store for just breakfast cereals, or make a store for just pizza with like the most ridiculous ingredients on it, and people eat that shit up, and they're one of the more successful businesses out there.
Big city life is hard.
Yes, it is.
When I lived in Berkeley, like, you basically don't have time to do anything other than work. And even when you're off, you're kind of disconnected from everyone else, so it's a little lonely. And the job, like the jobs that you have to do if you don't find a good job are fucking tough. So just making it, even on a minimal level in a city, I'll give respect to those people. That's hard.
Mm. Yeah, you know what's funny? We're talking about this. Have you seen a movie called Her by Spike Jonze? It's got that one guy. What's the actor?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Scarlett Johansson plays Siri.
That movie basically plays into everything we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah,
Very good movie.
I didn't see it, but I know what you're talking about.
I went into it trying to hate it. I will do this sometimes. While I go into a movie and I've heard everybody say that it's a great movie and it's the greatest thing ever since sliced bread, and I will go into it actively trying to hate it. I came out of that movie practically like misty-eyed, almost ready to cry, just because it is. And I can admit that. I can totally admit that. I'm secure. Totally secure. But that movie actually actively tackles those subjects that we're talking about, that fear of impotence, how the things that we want as human beings don't necessarily change, but technology does change, and it's getting way, way, way more than anything we can really predict. And it's both really sobering and also really hopeful, because it's got both those things going on, and it tackles and it wraps all that into all those shitty, lovey-dovey feelings that you get when you fall in love.
I gotta say that's actually a really great example of our brains not having caught up with our technology. When you answer a text, or when you get a text, right, your brain just shoots a little bit of dopamine, and it's like a drug addiction. It's actually exactly like a drug addiction.
Yes.
And so the technology we've invented unintentionally is rewarding us, this like primitive part of our brain, to do something that's not necessarily good for us. And it is isolating us, and our social connections are what make human beings happy. Like, that's how we thrive.
Yep. Speaking about social connections, why don't we move on to our next topic, since we're approaching the end of our time here. We can make it longer. We will. But let's move on. Since we're talking about movies, let's move on to things that bring people together, like mutual hatred of films that are most likely either cash grabs or
a mutual love of arguing about which films are terrible.
There you go.
That's
there you
go.
We got a lot of movies that are in theaters right now, and I'm going to talk about a couple of those. We got Finding Dory.
So Finding Nemo. I actually haven't seen Finding Nemo yet.
Cute movie. And it very much follows and perfects that Pixar formula. You got an extremely traumatic and depressing opening. That, you know, like the first 10 minutes of
that stuff.
The first 10 minutes of a Pixar film is usually going to be very like traumatic and sad. Like the first 10 minutes of Up are like the most sobering thing you'll ever see.
They have to set up like emotional. They need to be cathartic at the end, where they resolve some emotional tension. So if they don't set it up at the beginning of the film, it kind of doesn't work.
It's a cute movie. I would definitely say it's like at least something you show the kids, and Pixar's always kind of had that, going way back to even the '90s, like with Brave Little Toaster, which was way more existential.
Dude, I love Brave Little Toaster.
Way more terrifying, way more existential themes, but they kind of go with that, but with like little fish. They did. It was same company. John Lasseter was involved in it, I think, and it was the blueprint for Toy Story. Before they made Toy Story, they wrote down Brave Little Toaster first, and I don't know how successful it was at the time. I think it just wasn't promoted very well, but
Probably.
It was all right. So Finding Dory is the inevitable sequel that's probably just going to give us more of exactly what we got from the first one.
Which is great if you have kids.
Yeah, it's fine for kids. Moving on, Warcraft. I can't see that being good, but apparently I'm being told that it is.
Well, okay, so I think that it could be good, right? The Warcraft universe, right? I was actually reading a Warcraft book at Borders or something like that the other day.
Yeah.
And it was like talking about the movie, and it said the difference between like Lord of the Rings and a bunch of other fantasy genres is that, number one, the orcs are very human.
Yeah, okay.
And they have guns, right? Which really does kind of change the dynamic of the whole universe, basically. But I mean, I've been playing Warcraft since the original Warcraft RTS.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that universe, but I'm not 100% sure if it's going to translate well to the screen.
Who knows? It looked visually impressive, but it was kind of jarring to see the mix between like live action actors that are humans and then the CG that is the orcs.
It's always
It is. It's so jarring to me, and it looks. If there's one thing that's going to turn me off to fantasy, it's going to be overuse of CG, and that was the reason I couldn't sit through The Hobbit, because I was used to the Lord of the Rings being so real and like made and crafted. Like even the sets were like, even though they were miniatures, they looked real because they were miniatures. The all the armor and all the prosthetics was just top of the fucking line. And then seeing The Hobbit and then seeing Peter Jackson just fall into, let's have everyone projected against a green screen and just have everything going on in the background totally unrealistic looking and cartoony.
It's funny because when you make a movie on a budget, you end up using like models and like real stuff, and you would think that say you want to make a big production, why would you spend more money on the CGI and all that kind of stuff when you could make it look better and spend less money on it?
Yeah.
It makes more sense to me.
Yeah, because the man already got all of his groundwork done when he did Lord of the Rings, because that was like a huge undertaking. Because filming on location is difficult. Filming with prosthetics and sets and getting all that stuff out there, it's a phenomenal amount of work. And I have mad respect for anyone who does it, like the original Star Wars, like George Lucas.
Snapchat.
Yeah, I don't even have the patience to go out there and film myself, or this guy dressed up as Crackhead Dracula, which we do on occasion. Crackhead Dracula. Original character, do not steal, trademark. But yeah, so I have mad respect for anyone who can do that, and to see a guy who did that before sort of coast off of his already achieved success off that, it's just, and then I actually saw it, and they threw in all the fan service that was just left and right, just, we're going to reference Lord of the Rings. We're going to make a movie and call it The Hobbit, but we very much want it to be Lord of the Rings because it has to appeal to that audience that came for the first one. And we're going to throw characters in there who weren't even in the books and just, cater to that. And I just, you've killed it for me at that point.
I really think that they should have, I mean, if I had done it, I would have gone a totally different way. Since The Hobbit was supposed to be a children's book, I would have definitely gone the children's book route with the movie instead of the kind of basically
Lord of the Rings Part 4.
Yeah, the children's book had its scary moments, but it was more kind of catered towards like being a grand adventure, whereas, no, Lord of the Rings was straight up, you are battling evil incarnate.
It also would have only been one movie, and not three, because that was stupid.
Dumb idea.
It was fucking stupid.
Very dumb idea. So, yeah, Warcraft movie, I'm not decided, but I understand what you're saying, that it's kind of a cool concept that the orcs are actually intelligent and not just, just like, arr, arr, arr.
If I had the $100 it cost to go to the movies, I would go.
Alright. Okay, moving on. Conjuring 2. You said you hadn't seen it before. Jake, you said it was indifferent.
It was a movie.
It was a movie. It was hailed as one of the scariest movies ever, and I went to go see it.
True.
Not at all. Far from it. And it was like, I'll give it points. It at least tried. It tried to do a few things without relying too heavily on jump scares, and I hate jump scares.
Yeah, I hate them too because they actually scare me. And they shouldn't, but they do.
Yeah, no, I just like I hate them for the sake that they are always so lazy. Their execution is always just the most lazy thing ever. A jump scare can be fine when the suspense that leads up to it is palpable and feels suspenseful, and it's got you wrapped into that bit. But when you've got jump scares coming out, and you got the ones where it's always a person playing a prank, and they come out and they're like, "Boo!" and then this guy's like, "Oh shit, you scared me!"
And then it actually happens.
And then it actually happens. I'm just like, "Fuck you, director. Fuck you."
I gotta say though, my favorite jump scares are when you're just completely not expecting it. Like, there was no fucking reason that should happen, but when you look back after it's happened, you're like, oh, I could totally see why that happened.
Yeah.
When it's realistic and you weren't expecting it, because that's when things that are scary actually scare me.
To me, for me, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more relying on suspense and suggestion than it is on.
Those are much better horror films.
Yeah, I'd say like a perfect example would be one like Jacob's Ladder. I know it's not fair to compare Jacob's Ladder to this movie, but
No, it's not.
but I will anyway because I think we need to, because all horror movies have just gone down this shitty ass path where unless they're an independent film and they're being taken by somebody, like perfect example, the Babadook independent film that it would at least trying to do something apart from the typical fanfare, and The Witch, which was a new one that just came out, very dreadful and suspenseful, movies that are actually focusing on the narrative being something horror, not just having a monster that goes boo. It's got an aspect to the narrative that's meant to disturb you, that's meant to suggest something sinister, something evil. That's where I think those are held. And in Jacob's Ladder, there were almost no jump scares, but when something happened on the screen that was supernatural or monster-like in appearance, it was very quick, it was very subtle, and it was jarring nonetheless. You didn't have to have a huge sting noise that just goes, "Bah!" All you had to do was just see it, and it would be just a split second. Like there's a part where he's walking off, he's walking down this pathway, and a car is like chasing him for no reason, and he has to like duck behind a cover to get away from the car that's going nuts. And as the camera pans behind him, you see this twisted, contorted face looking at him from the inside of the car, and it looks like demon, and it's so subtle, and there's not a single
where you can miss it, basically.
Yeah, no way to miss it, but at the same time, once you've seen it, you're just kind of like, okay, that was way more unsettling than anything I've seen in other movies.
I gotta say that the way I judge a horror movie is if I'm unwilling to walk home in the dark or something after I've seen it, then yeah, that is a good horror movie.
Yeah, and the thing that makes you not wanting to walk home late at night is that power of suggestion, is that power of subtly throwing under an image that is stark to you. It has to be a stark, contrasting image that's meant to make you think a little bit, and it makes you uncomfortable. For the first few seconds, you don't even know why it makes you uncomfortable, but it does, and all you know is you don't want to see that shit walking home.
You know what that reminds me of is in Warhammer 40K, right? Mm-hmm. The warp they just have images like paintings or structures that look off somehow, and you can tell that they're evil, or they'll make you go insane just by looking at
contorted,
it, just because their angles are off, or something is just very strange about like the fabric of reality in that area.
Yeah, it's not adding up, and it defies your rational explanation of the world that you see around you, and that is something that it's fundamentally lacking. I'm sorry, I like to talk about this because I'm a huge horror snob. I'm a giant elitist.
You have always been a massive horror junkie. Like, it's great.
Yeah. Well, that's just part of it. I've always had really bad night terrors, and my nightmares are way more scary than movies, and I wish that movies could reflect that more. But I think it's just, we have too many movies that are just jump scares, that are just, like one missed call, or some shit like that. It's like the most basic ass shit ever. I'm just like, come on, you guys can do better than this. You can't tell me there's not one director out there who can take it to that extra level that just makes people not only do they not want to see the movie because they're scared, but they literally don't want to see the movie because it might give them, like, a case of post-traumatic stress disorder or something.
Man, if you can make a movie that gives somebody PTSD, I'd be impressed.
It'd be a vast accomplishment. And I think a lot of that was lost in the 80s, because the 80s you could get away with pretty much anything that you wanted to put on screen, like The Thing, that one film that I got right up there by I think it was John Carpenter. Yeah, the 80s version with Kurt Russell. So gruesome in its details, so awful looking, just because of the effects and everything, and also the suggestion, the idea. It wasn't just that there's a monster. It was playing the characters against each other. You got all these guys stuck up in Antarctica, and there's a monster there that can kill people, absorb them, and take their form.
Okay, what I liked about that movie was there was so little time where the monster was actually
on screen.
Yeah, the monster was basically not involved in the movie for like 90% of it. The rest of the time, you're just like, okay, when the fuck is it gonna scare me? Like, just get it over with already. Like, it's fucking
And when it does happen, you're like mortified because it's really grotesque and awful looking, and just the suggestion that it can imitate a person to a perfected,
perfect,
state.
It's just absolutely perfect.
Where you can't tell who's who and what's what. And the thing
Could
that's
it talk? I can't remember if it talk.
It can. As a human, it can talk. The thing that made that movie so fucking fantastic to me too is that at any given time, if you're really paying close attention, you can tell who the thing is at one time or another, because there's so many little tiny subtle hints thrown into the screenwriting, into the screenplay. Yeah, as to, like, perfect example. There's a part where they open up the blood containment because somebody has to have a blood transfusion, and it's been leaked. Somebody got in and let all the blood out and they're like, who did that? Only one guy's got the keys. And a scene directly before that, when a guy gets killed by the monster, you see a guy walk in and he sees it and he runs away, and just before the scene transitions, you hear a pair of keys hit the floor, implying that he was holding a pair of keys and that he had the keys, and then the monster got the keys that he dropped. That solves the mystery. You would have never noticed that unless you were paying such close attention, and every single frame and shot of that movie, every line of dialogue has a purpose that adds up those 2 plus 2 to make you think, okay, who's the thing and who isn't.
See, I gotta say that any movie, whatever the genre, that type of subtlety is what makes a good movie.
Agreed.
Like, if you can tell someone, if someone can tell what's going to happen in the movie, if you could predict the future if you were paying close enough attention, that's a good fucking movie.
Yeah, and I think that's lost on a lot of major audiences now because they don't want to have, because that technically requires a little more work on the viewer than it does normally. And if you go see a movie like The Conjuring, you're going to go and immediately have the ghosts jump out at you and go boo, and that's the payoff. There's no work that has to be done on the part of the viewer to add 2 plus 2.
See, this brings us back all the way back to the beginning of this, where our brains have just not evolved to the point where we are able to deal with the fucking technology we have. Like, it's ridiculous.
Exactly. Moving on, since we're running out of time, another movie that's out right now that's a big deal apparently is X-Men Apocalypse. I haven't paid attention to any of the new X-Men movies that came out.
I haven't seen any of them. I want to see all the superhero movies that have come out in the last few years. I want to see them all. I haven't seen any of them, but I want to see all of them.
We're in the same boat then, because I'm going in blind.
I gotta say that I know for a fact that at least most of them probably are going to disappoint me in some way. Yeah. But I'm hoping that a few of them are going to be gems. Yeah. Whether they are or not is
up to your interpretation, I guess.
Well, yeah.
This new one was just kind of like hitting a few notes because it's the biggest arc for the X-Men. I mean, Apocalypse is what a lot of people consider to be
that is the X-Men story.
Yeah, it is the finale of the X-Men story, pretty much.
Yeah.
Or the crescendo, or whatever you want to call it. So a lot of stock is writing on it, and it was weird to me that was like the main thing. I only heard about it because I saw people talking about the poster, and there was this celebrity. We're gonna change topics now. There was this
still the same topic.
Still kinda. But Rose McGowan, she was going out there saying that she saw the poster of X-Men Apocalypse, and it has Apocalypse choking Mystique, and she says, "Oh, this promotes violence against women."
Now, okay, so on the one hand, I understand where she's coming from because, it is a poster of supposedly a man choking a woman, but in reality, I don't really think that that's at all what's going on, because Apocalypse is not really a man necessarily.
Yeah, and also you got to consider that Mystique is probably one of the more powerful X-Men, period.
Yeah, dude, like, if anything, him choking her is showing that women can be strong and powerful.
Doesn't she end up beating him? That's what I remember hearing, is that she ends up beating Apocalypse.
I don't know. I don't remember that from the comics, but then again, I don't remember a lot from the comics.
Yeah, so that just bugs me. I think that's kind of silly that people just try and get their 20 seconds of fame by being morally outraged about something that's definitely not even an issue. That the only people who are really reading that much into it are the people who want to start drama over nothing.
Yeah, or have been conditioned to believe that everything like that is bad.
Yeah. Well, okay, I think that's all the time we got for today. We're going to probably see you later. This is Rolo, Molz. saying
Deuces.
later, Jake.
Later.
Later.
What?